Labor today actually confronted reality, and that is if you're going to do what they want to do to the energy system, and that is transition to renewables, well, there's one form of energy you absolutely must embrace. All the science, all the technology tells you this, and that is gas. You've got to have gas generation as your firming to fill in the gaps when the renewables aren't around. Now, it just makes common sense, and finally Labor is starting to try and front up to that common sense, but that only sent the Greens spare. Have a listen to Adam Bandt.
By opening new coal and gas and backing new coal and gas mines out past 2050, Labor is pouring petrol on the fire. Make no mistake, Labor is now threatening Australian lives and livelihoods by backing coal and gas out past 2050 and fast-tracking climate collapse.
That bloke is right on the edge, isn't he? That's Adam Bandt, and he's out there. Let's go to the Shadow Resources Minister, Susan McNaughton, now, who joins us from Beef Week in Rocky, where everybody's been this week. Susan, this is bizarre, isn't it, that the Greens seek to demonise gas, because you can't have a mainly renewables grid without lots of gas generation. Do you think that Labor have finally sort of reached an epiphany here, or are they going to have trouble in their own ranks backing gas properly?
Well, Chris, you've got to wonder who's running the show if the Greens feel so emboldened to make these sort of absolutely ridiculous comments, because you're absolutely right. It's either peaking and firming for electricity, it's gas in manufacturing, or gas in homes. For all those reasons, we need more gas, not less. That will make Australia a great place to live. It will secure Australian jobs, because manufacturing is having to make some hard decisions in this country. And after 2 years of Albanese Labor government, a tax on the gas industry, a tax on investment and gas supply, you know, the future gas strategy, we're working through the detail, but it's going to be a lot to make up for the last 2 years where they have used funding of the Environmental Defender's Office, new IR and environmental legislation, interventions into the gas market. For all these reasons, gas is really under pressure to remain, seeing Australia as a great, logical place to invest. And has Labor seen the light? Well, we can only hope so, because for the last 2 years, they've been trying to keep us in the dark, Chris.
They can't even fix this from Canberra, though, Susan, because even though our country's basically floating on gas, you know, we've got more gas than we could ever possibly use. We're the largest exporter, one of the largest exporters of gas. We've got state governments that are preventing people from accessing it. The Victorians won't let people access the enormous amounts of gas in Victoria. Even parts of South Australia have been blocked off from exploration. There have been people trying to get gas out of the western plains of New South Wales for decades, and they keep being stymied. Unless state governments allow access, then we're not going to be able to actually power ourselves.
Well, we're back to where I started. Who is running this show, Chris? If Australians knew the choices that some of these state governments were making, and the consequence for their standard of living, the consequence for their well-paid job, the consequence for manufacturing and taxes paid in this country, they would be saying enough. And Victoria is a great example. It's a state that has not been doing the heavy lifting for a long time. They've allowed their gas supplies to decline without bringing any new gas supplies to market. And you're right, they have excess gas, both onshore and offshore. The Narrabri project in New South Wales is another example. I'm delighted to see the Northern Territory government trying to bring the Beetaloo projects online. But we need to be bringing more gas to market. Like we've seen in the US, it's driven the price of gas down, it's driven the price of electricity down, and it means that Americans are enjoying a resurgence of manufacturing, a resurgence of jobs, and a first world lifestyle. We are jeopardising all of that with the kind of crazy policies that Labor has had in place for 2 years. And of course, I mean Labor federally and Labor at a state level. So
it's madness. It's more of this.
We can do.
More of this
No.
national energy self-harm. It amazes me. Thanks for joining us, Susan. I appreciate it. Susan McDonald there, who's the Shadow Resources Minister. When I was a kid growing up, I remember we'd learn about those the gas wells in Bass Strait. We'd learn about the gas being discovered and pumped out of the ground at Moomba, and a pipeline being built from Moomba across the desert to Sydney, to power Sydney. We used to think, this is great. Isn't our country going places? We're developing all this technology and empowering ourselves. We were taught to be proud of it. We learned about it. We were proud of it. Now we just want to do ourselves harm on energy at every turn until we're stuck sitting in the back blocks burning our scraps, I suppose.